So let's bring in Marianne Williamson. It's good to have you again. Haven't spoken in a while. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you are one to see the existential nature of these elections. Certainly that was a big part of why you got involved last time. You certainly had enough going on in your life. You didn't need to bring the drama of politics into your existence without cause. The argument will be made here. Marianne, this matters too much. You could be the reason that Trump gets back in if you weaken Biden in a primary.
I argue the opposite. I argue that Biden is a weak candidate. 70% of the American people said that they don't want him to run, Chris. Over 50% of the Democrats said that they would like to see another candidate. It's because the fascists are at the door that the Democratic electorate should have as wide an array of options before them as possible. We should be having a very serious conversation. Who is the person and what is the agenda that is actually the most compelling alternative to what either DeSantis or Trump or anyone else will be offering to the American people. This should not be a decision made by a few. It is a decision that should be made by the democratic process, the democratic electorate, who listen to the alternatives and then decide in a primary election.
Look, I hear you. You're not wrong about the numbers. And you know already, I'm not a big fan of the party system to begin with. I think that it's a battle to the bottom all the time. But here's the pushback you'll get from your own people in your party. Do you want Trump or Biden? There's the choice. Do you want Trump or Biden? And if you go after Biden and weaken him and say he's weak, you're helping elect Trump. That's what you're doing. And that's what you'll have to own.
Well, what you just said is that they are dictating that it's a choice between Trump or Biden. What I'm saying is that whoever they are not the ones who should be making the decision. The decision should be made by the Democratic electorate. It's called democracy. It is called democracy. It is the Democratic primary electorate that should be deciding who is the best candidate to put up against Trump or DeSantis or anyone else. It shouldn't be a bunch of elites. This is not 100 years ago, where a bunch of men sat around at a table smoking cigars, just deciding who the nominee would be. That is not the way the party system is supposed to work. The party is supposed to stay in the background until the electorate has decided and then come in and help the candidate who has been determined by the electorate. That is why the president should be debating his opponents in this race.
Yeah, that you're going to have a good fight on that. It's going to be very hard. You know, the party's going to rely on precedent and say, yeah, that never happens. Why would we do it this time? But I understand why you want it to happen.
Something to that. Hold on a moment, please. I grew up at a time where Eugene McCarthy and Bobby Kennedy Sr. did run against Lyndon Johnson. So I grew up at a time where it was not considered weird for that to happen. You'll talk like, oh, it's so weird. It's actually not. It's only in the modern era where the parties have grabbed so much of the power that it is considered weird and that they claim to have tradition on their side. I'm old enough to remember a time when that's not true at all. Eugene McCarthy ran. Bobby Kennedy ran. Nobody thought it was strange.
I understand. It was not recent, but you are not wrong. And more importantly, forget about what you remember from when you were younger. You're just right about the parties. I am not in any way condoning how they run things. I think we're playing the fringes in this country and the empowered few, and I think it's a huge mistake. But you're in that process, you're in that game. That's your choice, and the game has rules. But I do want to ask this, though, for people who are taking the temperature of their possibilities. What do you believe Biden should have been doing that he hasn't been? For the audience's edification, one of your criticisms of Biden is he's not progressive enough. He did the rescue plan. He did the infrastructure bill. He did the Inflation Reduction Act, even though they shouldn't have called it that. He did the CHIPS Act. He is working on gun safety in a way that we haven't seen before. Why is that not enough?
First of all, I just want to say, based on something you said a couple of minutes ago, I think the whole point when you talked about the party, democracy should not be a game. You're right. They've turned it into a game, and it shouldn't be one. So let me just say that.
I agree.
As far as the president is concerned, first of all, he approved the Willow Project. So he has said himself that climate change is an existential crisis for the human race, and he's right. And he's also right that he gave some very healthy investments in green energy in the Inflation Reduction Act. However, with the approval of that $8 billion ConocoPhillips oil drilling project on the North Slopes of Alaska, he has completely nullified all of the benefits of those green investments. Plus, he has given more oil drilling permits to oil companies even than Trump did. And he has given approval for the exportation of liquefied natural gas. The president said that he would raise the minimum wage. He did for federal workers, but when it came time to taking it further, he allowed the parliamentarian to stop him. The president has said that he would not sign a Medicare for All bill. Look, the president is making incremental changes. The president does what the corporate Democrats do. They try to make an unjust system more easily survivable. But the problem is the Democratic Party should stand for ending the injustice. We should do what Franklin Roosevelt did, not just alleviate people's stress, but bring about genuine economic reform.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.